Hello, Professor. I hope this video finds you well. We're almost done with the first month of the new year, 2020, which is exciting. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So, this past week we went over psychosocial and social emotional development, and we made this cool e-maze, which I've never used, but kind of like PowerPoint. So, let's go ahead into this. Okay, so today's lesson plan. One, we are going to go over Erik Erikson's 8 stages of psycho-emotional development. And second, we're going to go over social-emotional development. So first, Erik Erikson was an American-German psychologist, and his studies were largely influenced by Freud. Pretty interesting, I thought. And culture and society played the major role. So we'll definitely dive into how those affected each of these stages when we go over them. And lastly, I thought was interesting is that Erik Erikson always believed that there was plenty of room for development throughout life. So there is sets of ages that are put on each stage. However, like I said, there was plenty of room for development throughout life, and you could always be working on these. So let's go ahead. And the first stage is going to be at 1 year old, which is trust versus mistrust. And the virtue here is hope, and the negative outcome is suspicion. So this is going to be where the child is looking for the parent for stability and consistency of care. So an infant, obviously, everything is done for them. So hope is definitely going to be given here if the parent is reliable, feeding them on time, picking them up when they're crying, versus suspicion, which would be the negative outcome of the parents not being inconsistent, at least. Okay, so the second stage is the 2nd year of life, which is autonomy versus will. The virtue here is will, and the negative outcome is inadequate or feeling inadequate. So this point of life is also each stage is very important, but this stage is important because this is where encouragement increases independency. So children are starting to develop on their own and understand that they are capable of things on their own. This is where this is finally clicking. And if they're not encouraged, they will feel inadequate. Or if they are being overly controlled or questioned when they do something, that would also make them feel inadequate. But a sense of will is given if they are encouraged to try new things and supported in their new adventures. All right, so the third stage is 3 to 5 years old, which is initiative versus guilt. The virtue here is purpose, and the negative outcome is guilt. Now, 3 to 5 years old is really where things, they're developing a lot more quicker than they were in the previous stage, and developing a lot more tools. So purpose, this is where they are actually interacting with children more. So they're going to school in this phase, and they're going to be dealing with activities and games that include others, and also make-up stuff. So the sense of make-believe also happens here. So a sense of purpose is given to the child if they are collectively working with other children and they're feeling that they are, wanted in group settings. That gives them a sense of purpose. Guilt here is good if children are going to be over criticized or critiqued. Also, this is the stage where children start asking questions all the time, and if they're not properly given answers, or if the parent was to just, or even a teacher, shush them away, this would make them feel guilt. All right, so the fourth stage is 6 to 12 years old, which is industry versus inferiority. And the virtue here is competence, and the negative outcome is doubtful. So 6 to 12 years of age, they are going through elementary, starting middle. So this stage here is going to be a little bit more of where the child is looking for approval from their peers, and social standards are actually, they're acknowledging them at this point, where in previous that wasn't even something that they would be thinking of, but now they're actually wanting to feel competent, and that would be the virtue here, that they can participate in society and collectively do it with their other peers. Where one would feel doubtful in this stage is if they are feeling restricted by their teacher or guardians, or not being encouraged again, or being lack of initiative from parents or teachers. If they're not giving that to them, then they're going to feel doubtful in their place in where now society has put them. So fifth stage is going to be 12 to 18 years old, and this is identity versus role confusion. 12 to 18 years old, obviously people are going through so much at this phase. You're, ending middle school, going into high school, coming out of high school, going into real life, and puberty and all of this stuff is happening. So fidelity, which is very interesting, is at this stage is the virtue, fidelity, and the negative outcome is identity crisis. So at this point in your life, you're trying to figure out who you are in life and your future career, relationship, where you belong in society, what role you play. So a lot is kind of going on within this. So the negative outcome of this could be the identity crisis and pretty much the question of who am I? So that is a big role confusion that's happening at this point of your life if you're not getting to the steps that you need to be. Number 6, the sixth stage is 18 to 40 years old. So pretty much establishing relationships at this point, trying to build a career, paying taxes and bills, and all this stuff is happening at this stage of life. And this is going to be intimacy versus isolation. So the virtue here is love, and the negative outcome is isolation. So at this point in someone's life, via Erik Erikson, one is forming close relationships and creating a sense of commitment with people around them. So if they are doing those, their virtue, love, is going to be happening. While the negative outcome is if they are avoiding intimacy or having fear of relationships, or maybe just doesn't have the proper tools to teach, to do these, then one would feel isolated. So the seventh stage here is 40 to 65 years old, which is generation versus stagnation. The virtue here is care, and the negative outcome is unproductive. So at this point in life, normally they have established a family or a career, and your main kind of purpose now, you feel like you're creating or nurturing either your family or your relationship, or maybe it just be your home that you live in. But at this point in your life, care is that virtue because you're caring for others and even your community. Maybe at this point in your life, you realize that, how can I give back? What can I do for others? The opposite, or the negative outcome of this, would be unproductiveness. So if you feel a disconnect with society or a community, you almost feel motionless. So there's just not much happening. So you are not really productively going up the scale. So yeah, there's just negative impact instead of positive, and you feel unproductive. The eighth stage is 65 and older, where integrity versus despair. The virtue here is wisdom, and the negative outcome is hopelessness. So at this point in life, you're contemplating your accomplishments. What did I do in life, and how, did I tick off everything that I hoped that I would? So that's a big part, and that's where wisdom comes in. So your virtue here, if you have done that, if you feel successful in yourself, if you feel that you've accomplished, and there's a sense of closure and completeness. Erik Erikson even went on to say that this, when you do face death, that you feel a little bit less stressed, I don't know, because you feel like you did actually complete maybe what you saw for yourself in life. Where the opposite would be hopelessness, and this is feeling guilt about your past, where you maybe didn't succeed or accomplish all that you were in hopes of. Okay, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and speed through the next few just because I know there's only so much time on here. So the next part was social emotional development, and I did go ahead and just put out each term, but I'm going to kind of go through them quickly just because I felt like this part is kind of just knowing social identity development is pretty much the learning of how to be human starting at birth, because even infants deal with social development or social emotional development. So it's defined as the child's experience, expression, and management of emotions, and the ability to establish positive and rewarding relationships with others. So as I mentioned earlier, learning how to be human and how to interact with others starting at a very young age. So responsive caregiving is where support is given to infants in order to regulate their emotions and a sense of predictability, safety, and responsiveness. So responsive caregiving begins obviously even before kindergarten. Parents, when you have infants, ensuring that, is their crib safe? Are they able to breathe at night? All of this kind of stuff. So that kind of falls into that category. I don't know why that blacked out. I'm sorry, but that is my emotional security area. So emotional security is creating close relationships with adults, and this gives them a sense of self and evolving understanding of the world around them. Temperament comes in because it plays a role in child's expressions of emotion. So regulating a child's temperament is definitely important. As a teacher, it's key to know which child is dealing with what sort of emotions, because if you have that understanding, you're going to have a better grip on your class and knowing that maybe this activity or this lesson might upset somebody, or these rules even, and how to deal with that in a classroom setting. So temperament is definitely important to social emotional development. All right, so emotion regulation. So this reflects the interrelationship of emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. So this is kind of how they all collect together, and I feel like emotion regulation happens once you can kind of achieve all three, because without all three you might be lacking a few tools that will help you regulate your emotion, where if you felt really upset, you might be able to handle it better if you did have those proper tools. Impulse control, which is helping adapt to a social situation and follow rules. Social understanding is the responses, communication, emotional expression, and actions of others. So this is pretty much what to expect from others, how to engage in back and forth social interactions, and which social scripts are supposed to be used in social situation. So this, to narrow it all down, is again building character skills and how to use them in the school setting. Effective communication is about the thoughts and emotions of others. And lastly, empathy, self-efficiency, and sense of self. So I believe all of these tie in pretty well, and obviously you know the definitions. So these are tie back to purpose, I think. It gives the student a sense of purpose if they know how to deal with empathy or understand their sense of self. So self-management, self-control, self-awareness, these all tie into this and are a key element of social emotional development. All right, I'm running out of time, so I think I went over everything. If you have any comments, please let me know. Thank you, and I'll see you later tonight.